My name is Eleanor Hayes, and 13 years ago, my daughter Rachel dropped her 3 babies on my porch in the pouring rain and drove away forever. I raised them, bandaged knees, paid bills, became their everything. Then, out of nowhere, she came back, with police and a lawyer, accusing me of kidnapping her kids. Why now? Why after all this time? The shocking truth exploded in court. It wasn't love pulling her back. It was money, a hidden trust fund, a cold, calculated plan she'd been waiting on for over a decade. This is the heartbreaking story of betrayal, sacrifice, and the day justice finally spoke. You won't believe what happened next. My name is Eleanor Hayes. Folks around here just call me Ellie, or Miss Ellie if they're being polite. I've lived in the same little gray clapboard house on Maple Ridge Road, about 15 miles outside Columbus, Ohio, since the day I married my late husband, Tom, back in '82. 2 bedrooms upstairs, 1 bathroom that's always too cold in winter, a kitchen with linoleum that's peeled at the edges, and the best thing about the place, a wide wraparound porch where I used to sit shelling peas or watching fireflies while the kids down the street rode bikes until the streetlights buzzed on. Simple life, quiet life, the kind you don't think twice about until it gets ripped open. I turned 52 that spring of 2012. Tom had been gone 7 years by then. Heart attack at 59, quick and merciless. I'd settled into widowhood the way you settle into an old coat. It doesn't fit right anymore, but you wear it anyway. I worked part-time at Millie's Diner on Route 23, pouring coffee for truckers and regulars who tipped in quarters and stories. I came home, fed the stray cat that lived under the porch, watched Jeopardy, went to bed. Rinse, repeat. I thought that was it. I thought the biggest surprises were behind me. Then came Tuesday, April 17th, 2012. Rain all day. The heavy gray kind that soaks through your shoes and makes the whole world smell like wet asphalt and regret. I was in the kitchen wiping down counters when I heard tires crunching gravel in the driveway. Looked out the window over the sink and saw Rachel's old silver Toyota Corolla, dented fender, 1 headlight out, pulling up crooked like she was in a hurry to leave before she even arrived. Rachel, my only child, 31 years old then, but looking 45 in the wrong light. She stepped out wearing a thin denim jacket that wasn't warm enough, hair plastered to her face from the rain. In the back seat, 3 little faces pressed against the fogged windows. Arthur, my serious 7-year-old grandson. Emily, 5 and already too wise for her age. And Andrea, barely 2, still in diapers and clutching a stuffed rabbit missing 1 ear. I opened the screen door before she even knocked. Rachel? Honey, what's going on? She didn't answer right away. Just opened the back door, unbuckled Andrea, lifted her out like she weighed nothing, and set her on the wet porch steps. Arthur climbed out on his own, holding Emily's hand. They looked up at me with big, uncertain eyes, the way kids do when they know something's wrong but don't have words for it yet. Mom, Rachel said, voice flat, almost mechanical. I need you to watch them, just for a bit. A week, maybe 2. I'm sorting some things out. She reached into the trunk and pulled out a navy duffel bag, the zipper half broken, stuffed with mismatched clothes, a couple sippy cups, Arthur's favorite Matchbox cars, Emily's Crayola markers, Andrea's spare pacifiers. She dropped it at my feet like it was trash she was done carrying. Rachel, wait, where are you going? What's wrong? Come inside, let's talk. I can't. She cut me off, eyes darting everywhere but at me. I need space. I'm not good for them right now. You are. She bent down, kissed Arthur quick on the top of his head, then Emily, barely brushing their hair. When she got to Andrea, she hesitated, just a second, then pressed her lips to the toddler's forehead like it hurt to do it. Andrea whimpered, reaching chubby arms toward her mama. Rachel stepped back fast, like the touch burned. Mom, please, just take care of them. I'll call, I promise. Before I could grab her arm, she was back in the driver's seat. Engine coughed to life. Taillights glowed red through the rain. I stood frozen on the porch, Andrea on my hip, getting heavier by the second, watching that Toyota reverse down the driveway, tires spinning a little in the mud, then disappear around the bend toward the county road. The kids were quiet, too quiet. Arthur stared at the empty driveway like he could will the car back. Emily started to cry, soft little hiccups. Andrea just buried her face in my shoulder, rabbit dangling from one hand. I carried them inside, one by one, dried them off with the good towels, made peanut butter sandwiches because that's what I had, put on cartoons, SpongeBob, I think, because noise felt better than silence. They ate sitting on the living room rug, still in damp clothes, eyes glassy. That night, I tucked them into the spare room, Tom's old office I'd turned into a guest space. Arthur in the twin bed, Emily curled next to him, Andrea in the pack and play I still had from when Rachel was little. I sat in the rocking chair until their breathing evened out. Then I went downstairs, poured a glass of cheap red wine, and stared at my phone. No call, no text, nothing. Next morning, I tried her cell, straight to voicemail. Her old apartment in Whitehall, empty when I drove over. Landlord said she'd skipped out on last month's rent. I called hospitals, police not emergency, even her ex-boyfriend's mom, who hadn't heard from her in months.
By day 4, I filed a missing persons report. The officer at the station was kind but blunt. "She's 31, ma'am, an adult. If she left voluntarily, there's not much we can do unless there's evidence of foul play. Parental rights are hers. You can petition for temporary guardianship if you want to keep them safe and legal." I went home numb. The kids asked, "When's Mommy coming back?" I said, "Soon, baby, soon." Lies tasted like rust in my mouth. A week became 2, 2 became a month. I enrolled Arthur and Emily in the local elementary school, same one Rachel went to 25 years earlier. Bought Andrea new diapers, sippy cups, a little coat with ladybugs on it. I called in every favor I had, extra shifts at the diner, sold my mother's pearl earrings to cover the first round of doctor visits and school supplies. Social services came by twice, saw clean clothes, full fridge, kids who hugged me goodbye when they left. Case closed, for now. Every night I checked my phone before bed. Every morning I looked down the driveway, half expecting that beat-up Toyota to pull up again. Part of me still hoped she'd come back, eyes red from crying, saying she was sorry, that she'd been lost but found her way home. But another part, the part that grew stronger with every silent day, started to whisper darker questions. Where was she really? Why hadn't she called even once? And the worst one, the one that kept me awake staring at the ceiling fan, what if she never meant to come back at all? I didn't know it then, but those questions were only the beginning. Because 13 years later, 13 long, hard, beautiful years of raising those babies into young adults, she would show up on my porch again. This time with 2 police officers, and the word kidnapping hanging in the air like smoke. But that's a story for later chapters. Right now, all I can tell you is how it started, with rain, a duffel bag, and 3 scared little faces looking up at me like I was the only solid thing left in their world. And God help me, I became exactly that. My name is Eleanor Hayes, and if you've stuck with me through chapter 1, you know how it all started, with rain, a duffel bag, and 3 scared little faces on my porch. What came next wasn't dramatic explosions or courtroom showdowns right away. No, the next 13 years were quieter, slower, the kind of slow that builds a life brick by brick until you look up one day and realize you've built a whole damn house. After Rachel drove off that April evening in 2012, the first few weeks felt like walking through fog. I kept expecting her to call, to text, to show up with excuses and apologies. Nothing. The silence was louder than any storm. Arthur was 7, going on 30. He'd wake up at night sometimes, stand in the hallway in his 2 big pajamas, hand-me-downs from a neighbor's kid, and ask in this small, careful voice, "Grandma, did Mommy forget us?" I'd pull him onto my lap in the rocking chair, wrap him in the quilt Tom's mom made decades ago, and say, "No, baby, she's just lost right now. But we're found. We've got each other." He'd nod, but I could feel the questions still sitting heavy in his chest. Emily, 5, handled it by drawing. She filled sketchbooks with crayon families, always a grandma with gray hair in the middle, 3 kids around her, no mom in sight. Sometimes she'd draw a car driving away, tiny red taillights like the ones we'd watched disappear. I'd find those pictures under her pillow, like she was hiding the hurt even from herself. I hung the happy ones on the fridge. The sad ones I kept in a shoebox in my closet. Proof that grief doesn't always scream. It whispers in primary colors. Andrea was the easiest and the hardest. At 2, she didn't understand abandonment. She just knew Mama was gone and Grandma was here. By 3, she started calling me Mama. The first time it slipped out, "Mama, juice?" my heart cracked open. I froze with the sippy cup in my hand. Part of me wanted to correct her, to say, "I'm Grandma, honey." But the bigger part, the tired, aching, protective part, let it stand. "Here you go, sweetheart," I said, and kissed her curls. From then on, that's who I was to her, Mama Ellie. It felt like stealing, but it also felt like the only honest thing left. I didn't have time to fall apart. There were mouths to feed, forms to fill, appointments to keep. I went from part-time at Millie's Diner to full shifts, then doubles when tips were good. The kids needed new shoes every 6 months, coats for Ohio winters, books for school. I sold what I could. My mother's gold locket, Tom's old fishing rods, even the silver tea set we got for our wedding. Never touched the trust fund Tom left. That was for them, locked away until they were grown.
School became our anchor. Arthur started 2nd grade that fall at Jefferson Elementary, same red brick building where Rachel once colored inside the lines. He was quiet, made a couple friends on the playground, joined the after-school Lego club. Emily loved art class, came home with paint under her nails and stories about mixing colors to make sad blue. Andrea started preschool at 4, clinging to my leg at drop-off until the teacher gently pried her away. Every pickup, she'd run to me with arms wide, yelling, "Mama!" across the parking lot. Other parents gave me looks, some kind, some curious, but nobody asked outright. Small towns talk, but they also mind their business when it counts. Social services checked in a few times that first year. A nice woman named Carla would sit at my kitchen table, clipboard in hand, watching the kids play while we talked. She saw clean clothes, stocked fridge, no bruises, lots of hugs. "You're doing right by them, Mrs. Hayes," she said once. "We'll close the file unless something changes." I nodded, relief mixing with fear. What if Rachel came back and wanted them? What if she didn't? Years started stacking up like pages in a book you didn't mean to write. 2013, Arthur lost his first tooth under my roof. 2014, Emily's first school play, where she was a tree and forgot her lines but beamed anyway. 2015, Tom's 10th anniversary passed quiet. I took the kids to his grave with daisies. Arthur asked why Grandpa couldn't come back. I said, "Some people go to a place where they don't hurt anymore." He squeezed my hand. By 2016, Andrea was starting kindergarten, backpack bigger than she was. She drew me pictures of our house with 4 stick figures, me biggest, them smaller, all holding hands. No empty spot for Rachel. I framed that one. Money was always tight. I learned to stretch $1. Thrift store clothes, library books, garden vegetables in summer. The kids never complained. Arthur started fixing things. Bikes with flat tires, the leaky saucet, even the old radio that only got static. "Grandma, I can make it work," he'd say. Tools spread on the garage floor like a surgeon's kit. Emily sold her drawings at the county fair one year, made $20 she spent on ice cream for everyone. Andrea collected rocks, lined them up on the windowsill like treasures. We built routines that felt like armor. Friday movie nights with popcorn on the couch. Sunday pancakes, burnt edges and all. Bedtime stories from the same dog-eared Becks I read to Rachel when she was small. I told them about their mom when they asked. She loved you very much, but she was sick in her heart. She needed to go away to get better. I never said she abandoned them. I couldn't bring myself to speak that truth out loud. Not yet. But every so often, the past would poke through.
A holiday card from a distant cousin asking about Rachel. A Facebook memory pop-up of old photos. Rachel holding baby Arthur, smiling like the world was hers. I'd scroll past fast, chest tight. Then came 2020. Pandemic hit. Schools closed. We were locked in together, just us four. I taught them math at the kitchen table, baked bread from scratch, watched the news until it hurt. Arthur, 15 then, helped with groceries, wore a mask like a soldier. Emily drew rainbows for the window. Andrea, 10 then, asked why the world was so quiet. I said, sometimes quiet helps us hear what matters. One afternoon in late summer, the mailbox clanged. Inside, a plain white envelope, no stamp, no return address. My hand shook as I opened it. A single photograph slipped out. Rachel, maybe mid-30s now, standing on a beach somewhere sunny. California, Florida, hair longer, smile wide, arms around a man I didn't know. Timestamp on the back, August 2018, 2 years earlier. No note, no explanation. I stared at that picture until my eyes burned. She was alive. She looked happy. While we were here scraping by, raising her kids, she was smiling in the sun. I didn't tell the children. Not yet. I hid the photo in the same shoebox with Emily's sad drawings. But from that day on, every creak of the porch, every unknown number on my phone felt different, like someone was watching, waiting.
I started checking the driveway more often, wondered if she was close, wondered why she sent that picture after 8 years of nothing. And deep down, in the quiet places I didn't like to visit, I started to wonder something worse. What if she wasn't coming back for love? What if she was coming back for something else entirely? But that fear was still small then, a seed buried under years of routine and love. It wouldn't sprout until much later. For now, we kept building our life, day by day, meal by meal, hug by hug. Because that's what family does when the world falls apart. It shows up, every single day. My name is Eleanor Hayes, and if you've been with me through the first 2 chapters, you know how those early years felt like holding your breath while trying to live a normal life. We built something solid, routines, laughter, scraped together Christmases with dollar store lights and homemade cookies. The kids grew taller, their questions about mommy got quieter, and I started to believe maybe the storm had passed, maybe Rachel really had vanished for good, and we could keep pretending the hole she left wasn't there. But nothing stays buried forever. By around 2023, the first real cracks started showing. Not loud, not obvious, just little hairline fractures in the foundation I'd spent a decade pouring. Arthur was 18 then, 6'1" with Tom's broad shoulders and my stubborn streak. He'd graduated high school the year before, working part-time at the auto shop down on Main, while taking night classes at the community college for automotive tech. He wanted to fix big rigs someday, maybe open his own garage. Every evening he'd come home smelling like motor oil and possibility, kiss my cheek and say, "Grandma, one day I'm buying you a new porch swing, no more creaky one." I'd laugh and tell him to save his money for his future, but inside I glowed. That boy was proof that love could outlast abandonment. Emily, 16, was all fire and color. She turned the spare bedroom into her art studio. Canvases leaning against walls, paint tubes everywhere, the faint smell of turpentine mixing with laundry detergent. She dreamed of art school in Chicago or maybe New York. Her portfolio was filling up with pieces that made my chest ache. Portraits of us 3 kids laughing on the porch, a self-portrait where her eyes looked older than they should, abstract swirls of blue and gray she called the quiet after. Teachers said she had real talent. I believed them. I started a little savings jar labeled Emily's Future on the kitchen counter. Every extra tip from the diner went in. Andrea, 13, was my sensitive soul. Quiet like Arthur used to be, but with a depth that scared me sometimes. She'd sit on the porch steps for hours reading fantasy books, braiding dandelion chains, asking questions that cut straight to the bone. "Mama Ellie, do you think my real mom ever thinks about us?" I'd always answer the same. "I think she does, honey. People carry love even when they're far away." But those words were starting to taste thinner. Andrea still called me Mama Ellie without hesitation,
but lately she'd stare at old photos of Rachel I kept in a drawer, careful not to touch them, like they might burn.
We were okay. We were more than okay, until the calls started. It was late spring 2023. I was in the kitchen chopping onions for chili when my phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail. Telemarketers, robocalls, the usual. But something made me pick up. Heavy breathing. Nothing else. Just slow, deliberate inhales and exhales, like someone was standing too close. I said, "Hello?" twice. No answer. Then a soft click. I hung up, heart thumping. Told myself it was a wrong number, a prank. But 2 nights later, it happened again. Same breathing. This time, at the end, a whisper. Barely audible, raspy. "They're not yours forever." My blood turned to ice. I slammed the phone down, checked every lock twice, peered out the windows into the dark yard. Nothing. Just crickets and the hum of the porch light. The next morning, I changed my number. Told the kids it was because of spam calls. They bought it, mostly. Arthur frowned, said, "You sure everything's okay?" I nodded too fast. But the unease stuck. I started noticing things. A car I didn't recognize parked across the street for too long one afternoon. Footprints in the soft dirt under the side window where the blinds sometimes stayed half open. Maybe nothing. Maybe my imagination running wild after 13 years of waiting for the other shoe to drop. Then came the night that made it real. It was October, cool enough for the first fire in the fireplace. The kids were upstairs, Arthur studying, Emily painting, Andrea reading. I was on the couch with a cup of tea, scrolling through Emily's latest Instagram art posts, when the phone rang again. New number, but I knew. I answered anyway. Breathing. Then that same whisper. "You can't keep them. She's coming." I whispered back, "Who is this?" My voice shook. A low chuckle. Male, maybe. Hard to tell. "Time's up, Grandma." Click. I sat there frozen, tea cooling in my hands. My mind raced through every possibility. An ex of Rachel's? A creditor? Someone she owed money to? Or, worst thought, Rachel herself, playing games from wherever she was hiding? I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the rocking chair by the front window, porch light on, staring at the empty driveway. Every shadow looked like a person. Every car that passed on the county road made my pulse jump. The next day, I installed cameras, cheap ones from the hardware store, the kind you stick on the eaves and monitor from your phone. Arthur helped me set them up without asking too many questions. "For security," I said. He nodded, but I saw the worry in his eyes. Emily noticed I was jumpy. "Mama Ellie, are you okay? You look tired." I hugged her tight, told her I was just working too many shifts. Andrea asked if I was scared of the dark like she used to be. I laughed it off, but my laugh sounded hollow even to me. The calls stopped after that. Maybe whoever it was got bored, or maybe they knew the cameras were up. But the damage was done. The piece we'd built felt fragile now, like glass instead of brick. I started digging quietly, pulled out old records, Rachel's last known address, her social security number from when she worked at the call center years ago. I searched online late at night when the kids were asleep. Nothing. No Facebook, no LinkedIn, no arrest records, no marriage license. She'd gone dark completely, like she'd erased herself. But that photo from 2020, the one in the envelope, kept nagging at me. I took it out of the shoebox sometimes, studied her face. She looked healthy, rested, happy. The man beside her had his arm around her waist like it belonged there. Who was he? Why send the picture at all? A taunt? A warning? Or just a reminder that she was still out there, living a life that didn't include us? I never told the kids about the calls. I couldn't bear to scare them. But I started locking the doors earlier, keeping the blinds down after sunset, sleeping with my phone under my pillow. Deep down, I knew something was coming. Not just a phone call, something bigger, the kind of thing that doesn't whisper, it knocks. And when it finally did, in the fall of 2025, it wouldn't be anonymous anymore. It would be her, standing on my porch again, flanked by police and a lawyer in a sharp suit, saying the words that would turn my whole world upside down. These kids were taken from me. This is kidnapping. But back in 2023, I didn't know that yet. All I had were cracks, small, spreading cracks, and a growing certainty that the past wasn't done with us. It was just getting started. My name is Eleanor Hayes, and by the time 2025 rolled around, I thought I'd finally figured out how to live with the ghost of Rachel in the background. The anonymous calls had faded to nothing after those cameras went up. The strange photo from 2020 stayed buried in the shoebox with Emily's old drawings, a reminder I tried not to touch. Life had settled into a rhythm that felt almost safe. Arthur fixing engines by day and studying by night, Emily's art winning local awards, Andrea hitting her teenage stride with straight A's and a quiet love for poetry. I was still at the diner, gray hair now, knees creaking more than they used to, but I was proud. We'd made it through the hard part. Or so I told myself. Then the letter came. It was a crisp January morning in 2025, the kind where the frost makes the porch steps slick and the air smells like wood smoke from someone's chimney down the road. I was sipping coffee at the kitchen table, going through the usual pile: bills, junk mail, a coupon for free coffee at the gas station, when I pulled out a plain white envelope from First Ohio Trust Bank. No colorful logo, just my name and address typed in neat black letters. Return address, the bank's downtown branch. I opened it slow, like it might bite. Dear Mrs. Eleanor Hayes, this letter serves as formal notification that an inquiry has been made regarding the Thomas J. Hayes Family Trust, account number 4782091. The inquiring party has requested information on access procedures, beneficiary status, and disbursement timelines for the minor beneficiaries, Arthur Hayes, Emily Hayes, and Andrea Hayes. Please be advised that per the terms established by the grantor, Thomas J. Hayes, deceased 2015, the trust remains irrevocable and locked until each beneficiary reaches the age of 21. Current estimated value, $82,347.19, as of December 31, 2024, to be divided equally among the 3 named beneficiaries upon maturity. The inquiring individual identified themselves as Rachel M. Hayes, biological mother of the beneficiaries. Should you have questions or require verification of guardianship status, please contact our office at the number below. Sincerely, Margaret Ellison, Trust Administrator. I read it twice, then 3 times. My coffee went cold in the mug. Rachel. After 13 years of radio silence, nothing. Not a birthday card, not a Christmas text, not even a sorry. She suddenly knew exactly where the money was, and she was asking about it. My hands shook so bad I had to set the letter down. The trust. Tom had set it up right after Arthur was born, back when Rachel was still married to her first husband and things looked hopeful. For the grandkids, he'd said, kissing my forehead. College, weddings, whatever they need. Not a dime for anyone else until they're grown. He'd been smart like that, protective. The account had grown slow but steady through stocks and bonds, untouched all these years. I'd never even considered dipping into it, not when we were scraping by on diner wages and thrift store finds. Now Rachel was sniffing around it. I called the bank that afternoon from the diner's break room, door closed, voice low so the cooks wouldn't hear. Margaret Ellison picked up on the second ring, professional, calm, like she dealt with family bombshells every day. Mrs. Hayes, thank you for calling. Yes, the inquiry came in last week. We verified the inquirer's identity through Social Security and a driver's license scan. It was definitely your daughter. Did she say why? I asked, throat tight. She requested the current balance and maturity dates. When we explained the age restriction and guardianship clause, she asked about challenging the trust terms. We advised her to seek legal counsel. Challenging. The word landed like a punch. I thanked her, hung up, and sat there staring at the grease-stained wall. My mind spun through every what-if. Was this why she'd disappeared? To wait out the clock? To let me raise the kids for free while the money compounded quietly in the background? And now, with Arthur turning 21 in just over a year, Emily the year after, Andrea 2 years behind, suddenly the payout was close enough to taste. I didn't tell the kids right away. Couldn't. Arthur would have been furious. He already carried enough quiet anger about his mom. Emily would have turned it into art, something dark and swirling. Andrea would have asked why her real mom only wanted them when money was involved. I wasn't ready to break their hearts like that.
Instead, I called my lawyer, the same one who'd helped me get temporary guardianship papers back in 2013, when the state finally agreed I was the stable one. Mr. Callahan, older than me, slow-talking, sharp as a tack. I read him the letter over the phone. He let out a long breath. "Eleanor, this isn't good. Parental rights don't expire just because someone walks away. If she files to reclaim custody before the kids hit 21, she could argue she's entitled to manage the trust funds as their legal guardian. Even if she doesn't get full custody, she might petition the court for access as a parent." "But she abandoned them," I said, voice cracking. 13 years. "I know, but courts love biological parents. They'll say she was estranged, not abandoned. They'll want to hear her side. Addiction, depression, whatever story she spins. And if she can show she's stable now, well, judges lean toward reunification." I felt sick. What do I do? Document everything. Every school record, medical bill, guardianship hearing transcript. Get affidavits from teachers, neighbors, the social worker who closed the case. And start thinking about what the kids want. At their ages, the court will listen to them. Arthur's 18, he's legally an adult already. Emily and Andrea can voice strong preferences. I hung up and went back to work, pouring coffee on autopilot, smiling at regulars like nothing was wrong. But inside, the cracks from those anonymous calls 2 years earlier were widening into fissures. That night, I sat on the porch after the kids were in bed, wrapped in Tom's old flannel jacket, staring at the dark driveway. The cameras blinked red in the eaves. No cars, no shadows, just me in the cold. I thought about Rachel out there somewhere, maybe still with the man from the photo, maybe in a nice house, maybe planning her next move. Had she kept tabs on us all these years, watched the kids grow up from a distance? Or had she just waited, patient as a vulture, until the money ripened? The next morning, I pulled the trust paperwork from the fireproof box under my bed, read every line again. Beneficiaries: Arthur, Emily, Andrea. Guardian in event of incapacity: Eleanor Hayes. No mention of Rachel. Tom had been thorough, but thorough doesn't always win in family court. I started a new folder on my laptop, labeled Proof. Scanned every receipt, every report card, every photo of birthdays and graduations. I even dug out the old phone bill records showing no calls from Rachel since 2012. It felt like preparing for war, because that's what it was starting to feel like. A quiet, creeping war over 3 kids who'd grown up calling me mama, and a pile of money that suddenly made their real mother remember they existed. I didn't know it then, but the letter was just the opening shot. October 2025 was coming, when she'd show up on my porch with police and a lawyer, accusing me of the one crime I'd never commit: kidnapping. But back in January, all I had was a bank letter and a growing knot in my stomach. The kind of knot that tells you the past isn't done haunting you. It's just been biding its time. My name is Eleanor Hayes, and if you followed me this far, you know how the years had worn me down and built me up at the same time. By October 2025, the kids were no longer kids. Arthur was 20, broad-shouldered and steady, splitting his time between the auto shop and night classes, talking about moving out soon, but never quite committing. Emily, 18, had just gotten her acceptance letter to the Columbus College of Art and Design, partial scholarship, the rest on loans, and that little savings jar I'd kept on the counter for years. Andrea, 15, was in 10th grade, still my quiet poet, carrying a notebook everywhere and writing lines that made me cry when she wasn't looking. We'd settled into something close to normal. The anonymous calls were a distant memory. The bank letter about the trust fund had been filed away with a lawyer's note saying, "Monitor closely." And I'd started to believe, foolishly, that Rachel had moved on for good, that the money wasn't enough to pull her back after all. Then came Thursday, October 16th, 2025. It was just after 7 in the evening. The sky was that bruised purple you get in Ohio fall, streetlights flickering odd early. I was in the kitchen stirring spaghetti sauce, extra garlic the way Arthur liked it,
while Emily set the table and Andrea scrolled TikTok at the counter, laughing at some dance video. Arthur wasn't home yet. He'd texted he'd be late from the shop. A knock at the front door. Sharp. 3 quick raps. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and went to answer it, expecting maybe a neighbor with borrowed sugar or the delivery guy who sometimes mixed up addresses. I opened the door. Rachel stood there. 13 years older, but time had been kinder to her than it had to me. Hair cut in a sleek bob, highlighted blonde, makeup perfect, wearing a cream wool coat that looked expensive, way too expensive for the girl who'd driven off in a dented Toyota with nothing but a duffel bag. Behind her, 2 uniformed police officers, 1 male, 1 female, hands resting near their belts, and a man in a dark suit, briefcase in hand, looking like he billed by the hour. My stomach propped through the floor. "Mom," Rachel said. Her voice was calm, almost pleasant, like we were meeting for coffee. "I'm here for my children." The words hung there, cold and impossible. I couldn't move, couldn't speak, just stared at her face, older, smoother, but still the same eyes that used to look at me like I was the only person who understood her. Arthur appeared in the hallway behind me, wiping grease from his hands with a rag. "Grandma, who's—" He froze when he saw her. Emily stepped up beside him, phone forgotten in her hand. Andrea peeked from the kitchen doorway, eyes wide. Rachel's gaze swept over them, lingering just a second too long, like she was appraising something she hadn't seen in person for over a decade. Then she turned to the officers. "These are my children," she said, voice steady. "Arthur, Emily, and Andrea Hayes. I am their biological mother, Rachel Marie Hayes. I left them temporarily in my mother's care in 2012, due to severe postpartum depression and substance issues. I've been in recovery ever since, completed treatment, rebuilt my life. I have every legal right to them." She paused, then looked straight at me. "My mother has no legal guardianship papers that supersede my parental rights. She has withheld them from me for 13 years. This constitutes parental kidnapping under Ohio law." The word hit like a slap. Kidnapping. Me. The woman who'd raised them, bandaged knees, paid bills, cried at graduations. Kidnapping. The female officer stepped forward, hand raised gently. "Ma'am, we're here to keep things calm. We've received a report and need to speak with everyone. Can we come inside?" I stepped aside on autopilot. They filed in, boots on my clean rug, the suit guy closing the door behind them. The living room felt too small suddenly, air too thick. Arthur moved first. He put himself between me and Rachel, arms crossed. "You're not taking them anywhere." Rachel's eyes softened. For show, I thought. "Arthur, honey, I know this is a shock. I've missed you every day." Emily's voice cracked. "You didn't miss us. You didn't call, not once." Andrea just stared, clutching the door frame like it might hold her up. The male officer cleared his throat. "We need statements. Mrs. Hayes, Eleanor, can you explain your side?"
I found my voice, shaky but there. "I've raised these children since April 17th, 2012. She dropped them on my porch with a bag and drove away. No calls, no visits, nothing. I filed missing persons reports. Social services investigated. I got temporary guardianship through the courts in 2013. I have the papers. I have everything. School records, medical, tax returns claiming them as dependents. They call me Mama. I am their mother in every way that counts." The suit guy, her lawyer, I realized, spoke up. "Temporary guardianship does not terminate parental rights, Mrs. Hayes. My client has documentation of her rehabilitation, employment, stable housing in California. She's prepared to file for emergency custody if necessary." Rachel looked at the kids again. "I'm not here to hurt anyone. I just want my family back. I've changed. I fought for this." Arthur's jaw clenched. "You fought by disappearing? By letting Grandma do the work for 13 years? Rachel flinched. Real or fake, I couldn't tell. I was sick. I wasn't capable. But I'm here now. The female officer took notes. "We'll need to speak to the children separately, and we'll review the guardianship documents. For tonight, no one's being removed. But this is an active investigation. Ma'am," she looked at me, "we may need to follow up."
They asked a few more questions. I showed them the old guardianship order, printed from my file. They photographed it. Rachel stood quietly, arms folded, watching everything like she was memorizing the room.
Before they left, she stepped closer to me, close enough I could smell her perfume, something expensive and floral. She lowered her voice so only I could hear. "You'll hear from my attorney soon, Mom. This doesn't have to be ugly, but those kids belong with their mother, and the trust fund, it's going to help us start over, all of us." She smiled then, small, tight, victorious. My blood ran cold. The officers and lawyer filed out. Rachel lingered on the porch a second longer, looking back at the three faces in the doorway. "I love you," she said to them. "I always have." Then she turned and walked to a black SUV parked at the curb. Sleek, new, California plates. The taillights glowed red as she drove away, just like 13 years before. But this time, she wasn't running. She was coming for them. Inside, the kids collapsed. Andrea started sobbing, silent tears at first, then big, wrenching ones. Emily held her. Arthur paced, fists clenched. "Why now?" Emily whispered. "Why does she want us now?" I pulled them all into a hug on the couch, spaghetti forgotten, sauce burning on the stove. "I don't know, babies, but I know this. No one is taking you from me, not without a fight." That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the rocking chair by the window, porch light on, cameras rolling, watched the empty driveway. The trust fund, the sudden reappearance, the lawyer, the calm, calculated way she said kidnapping. It wasn't love pulling her back. It was money, and she was willing to burn our lives down to get it. But she didn't know one thing. Those kids weren't hers anymore. They were ours, and I'd go to war before I let her take them. My name is Eleanor Hayes, and after that October night in 2025 when Rachel showed up with police and a lawyer, the quiet life we'd scraped together shattered like cheap glass. One day we were eating spaghetti and laughing at Andrea's TikTok dances. The next, we were drowning in legal paperwork, court dates, and the kind of fear that sits in your stomach like lead. The first court hearing came fast. Emergency custody petition, filed the very next week. Rachel's lawyer moved quick, like they'd been planning this for months. Maybe they had. The summons arrived in the mail. Franklin County Family Court, November 3rd, 2025. I stared at the envelope so long, the postmark blurred. I called Mr. Callahan, my lawyer, right away. He met me at his office downtown, a small place above a coffee shop that always smelled like burnt espresso. He was in his late 60s, white hair, suspenders, the kind of man who still called women ma'am and meant it. He read the petition, lips pursed. "She's claiming abandonment was temporary," he said. "Says she suffered severe postpartum depression with Andrea, relapsed into opioids after Arthur and Emily's births too. Got clean in 2016, moved to California, married a man named Daniel Voss, real estate guy, 6 figures easy. She's saying she tried to contact you multiple times, but you blocked her." I laughed, bitter. "Blocked her? She never called, not once." "I believe you, Eleanor, but she's got affidavits, her sponsor from NA, her therapist, even a letter from her husband saying she's stable and remorseful. She's painting you as the gatekeeper who kept the kids from their real mother." He slid the petition across the desk. I read her sworn statement. "I, Rachel Marie Hayes Voss, left my children with my mother in 2012 due to untreated mental health and substance abuse issues. I entered inpatient treatment in 2014, completed outpatient in 2016, and have maintained sobriety since. I attempted contact via phone and email but received no response. I now seek reunification and custody so my children can benefit from a stable 2-parent home." 2-parent home. The words burned. She'd traded us for sunshine and a rich husband, and now she wanted to waltz back in like nothing happened. Mr. Callahan leaned forward. "We counter with everything. Guardianship orders, school records, medical history, character letters from teachers, neighbors, the old social worker Carla, and most important, the kids' own voices. Arthur's an adult, he can file his own statement. Emily and Andrea are old enough for the judge to consider their preferences heavily."
We spent the next weeks gathering proof. I dug out every scrap. Arthur's kindergarten registration form with my signature as guardian, Emily's appendectomy bill I paid in full, Andrea's dance recital programs where I sat in the front row clapping until my hands stung. I got letters from Millie at the diner. Eleanor raised those babies like her own, never missed a shift to be there for them. From Arthur's boss, kids reliable, respectful, credit goes to his grandma. From Andrea's English teacher, she writes about family with deep love for her Mama Ellie. The kids were scared but brave. Arthur wrote a one-page letter. My grandmother is my mother in every way. She fed us, clothed us, taught us right from wrong. Rachel left us on a porch and never looked back. I don't want to live with her. Emily drew a sketch to go with hers, a house with 4 figures, labeled us. Andrea's was short, in her neat handwriting. Please don't make us leave Mama Ellie. She's the only mom I've ever known. Rachel got supervised visitation rights almost immediately. The court ordered 3 sessions at a family center downtown, neutral ground, social worker present. First one was November 10th. I drove them there, knuckles white on the wheel. They were quiet the whole ride. When we pulled up, Rachel was already inside, waiting in a bland conference room with toys and a couch that looked like it had seen too many tears.
She stood when they entered, smiled big, arms open. My babies! Arthur stayed by the door. Emily crossed her arms. Andrea clung to my leg until the social worker gently said, "Grandma can wait in the lobby." I sat outside on a plastic chair, listening to muffled voices through the wall. Laughter from Rachel, forced, too bright. Questions about school, hobbies, gifts, new phones for all 3, fancy sneakers, art supplies. They were polite, distant. When the hour ended, they came out stone-faced. She asked if we wanted to live in California, Emily whispered in the car, said there's a pool and a room for each of us. Arthur snorted. Like that fixes 13 years. Andrea just stared out the window. She kept saying she was sorry, but it didn't feel real. The second visit was worse. Rachel brought photos, old ones of her holding baby Arthur, toddler Emily, pregnant with Andrea. She cried, told them she'd been very sick but was better now, asked about the trust fund casually. Your grandpa left something for you, right? We could use it for college, a house, whatever you want. Arthur shut down after that, told the social worker, I'm done with visits. The court noted his refusal, but didn't force him. Emily and Andrea went once more. Same script. Gifts, tears, questions about Nunny, disguised as future plans.
My lawyer dug deeper, found Rachel's husband, Daniel Voss, had filed for bankruptcy in 2022. Gambling debts, bad investments. They'd bounced back, but whispers online said the debts weren't fully paid. A private investigator friend of Callahan's pulled credit reports, high balances on credit cards, a second mortgage. Then came the big one. Daniel's LinkedIn showed he'd recently lost his real estate license over ethical violations. They were hurting for cash. The trust fund matured soon. Arthur at 21 next April, then Emily, then Andrea. Over $80,000 plus interest, enough to wipe out debts, buy time, maybe disappear again. It clicked then, cold and clear. This wasn't about love or regret. It was about survival. They needed the money, and the fastest way was to get custody, or at least co-guardianship, before the kids aged out. The final pretrial conference was brutal. Judge Harlan, gray-haired, no nonsense, looked over the file. Miss Hayes Voss, you've been absent 13 years. These children are bonded to their grandmother, but biology matters. I'm inclined to order reunification therapy and gradual custody transfer, unless compelling evidence shows otherwise. Rachel's lawyer pushed. My client has reformed. The children deserve both parents. Mr. Callahan stood. Your Honor, reformation doesn't erase abandonment. These kids have statements. They want to stay with Mrs. Hayes. The judge sighed. We'll hear from the minors in chambers next month. Until then, supervised visitation continues. And Mrs. Hayes, Eleanor, no interference. I walked out numb. The kids waited in the hallway. Andrea hugged me tight. We're not going anywhere, right? I kissed her forehead. Not if I can help it.
But inside, dread coiled tighter. Rachel wasn't fighting for them. She was fighting for what they came with. And the court was leaning her way. The truth, the texts on that old phone, the money motive, was still hidden in my attic. I hadn't played that card yet, but the clock was ticking, and I knew deep in my bones the next hearing would either save us or break us for good. My name is Eleanor Hayes, and by late November 2025, the court battle had turned our little house into a war zone without gunfire. Papers everywhere, summons, motions, affidavits stacked on the kitchen table like unpaid bills. The kids were quieter than I'd ever seen them. Arthur barely spoke at dinner anymore. He'd eat standing up, then disappear to the garage to tinker with engines until midnight. Emily stopped painting. Her studio stayed dark, brushes dry. Andrea carried her notebook like a shield, scribbling poems she wouldn't let anyone read. I kept smiling, kept cooking, kept saying, "We'll get through this." But inside, I was unraveling thread by thread. The supervised visits continued twice a week. Rachel showed up polished every time. New outfits, fresh highlights, that same expensive perfume. She brought more gifts: wireless earbuds, gift cards, a laptop for Emily's art programs. The social worker's reports noted positive engagement, mother showing remorse, children polite but reserved. Polite, reserved. That's code for they don't trust her and they don't want to be here. I stopped going inside for the handoffs. I'd wait in the car now, engine running, heater on full blast against the November chill. Every time the kids came back out, I searched their faces for cracks. Andrea usually cried quietly on the ride home. Emily would mutter, "She keeps asking about the trust money," like casually, like it's no big deal. Arthur refused visits after the third one. The judge allowed it. At 20, he couldn't be forced. One Saturday after a visit, Andrea came out clutching a small stuffed bear Rachel had given her to replace the old rabbit, she'd said. Andrea held it like it was contaminated. In the car, she whispered, "She said if we come live with her, we can have everything we ever wanted. A big house, vacations, college paid for." She paused, but she said it like we owe her. I gripped the wheel tighter. "You don't owe her anything, baby." That night, I couldn't sleep. The house felt too quiet, too full of ghosts. Around 2 a.m., I got up, wrapped myself in Tom's old robe, and climbed the narrow attic stairs. I hadn't been up there in years, not since we boxed up Rachel's old things after she left. Dust motes danced in the beam of my flashlight. Boxes labeled Rachel, high school, baby clothes, misc. I pushed them aside until I found the one I was looking for. A cardboard box marked Rachel's stuff, 2012. Inside, her old flip phone from back then, the cheap silver one she'd used before smartphones took over. Battery dead, of course. I took it downstairs, found an ancient charger in a junk drawer, plugged it in. It beeped weakly, screen lighting up after 13 years like it had been waiting. The phone still had a little juice. No passcode. Rachel never bothered. I opened the Messages app. Most threads were deleted. Contacts sparse. Me, labeled mom. A few old friends. Work. And one that made my pulse stop. Jay. I scrolled to the conversation with Jay. It started in March 2012, right before she showed up on my porch. March 15th, 2012. "Rachel, I can't do this anymore. The kids, the bills, Daniel screaming about money. I'm drowning. Jay, you gotta get out. Come stay with me in Cali. Rachel, I can't just leave them."
Then silence for months, until January 2016. "I'm clean. 2 years. Married now. Daniel's better when he's not drinking." "Congrats. Kids still with mom?" "Yeah. No contact." "Trust fund update?" "Checked online last year. Over 70K now. Arthur turns 21 in 2025. Clock's ticking." "Then we move. You file for custody before then. Get guardianship, control the payouts. We pay off the debts, disappear if we need to." Daniel's in deep again. Bookie's calling. "Exactly. This fixes everything." More messages followed, sporadic but damning. Plans to hire a lawyer, fake rehab letters, even a draft email to a private investigator to monitor the kids' ages and addresses. The last one was from 2024. Rachel to Jay. "Attorney says we can push abandonment as temporary. Judge will side with biomom. Money matures soon. We're almost there." No reply after that. Maybe Jay was gone. Maybe they'd cut ties. Didn't matter. I sat on the kitchen floor at 3 a.m., phone in my lap, tears streaming. Proof, real, cold proof she'd planned this from the start. Not postpartum fog, not a cry for help. A calculated exit, with the trust fund as the endgame. She'd used me as free childcare for 13 years, waited for the money to ripen, then came back to harvest it.
I copied every text, screenshots on my phone, then emailed them to myself and Mr. Callahan from an old laptop, burned them to a USB drive, hid it in the fireproof box with the trust papers. The phone itself went back in the attic, charger unplugged, like nothing had happened. Next morning, I called Callahan before the sun was fully up. "I found something," I said. "Rachel's old phone. Texts to someone named Jay. They planned the whole thing. Abandonment, waiting for the trust, come back for custody to control the money." He was quiet a second. "Can you bring it in today?" "I'll be there at 9. When I hung up, Arthur was standing in the doorway, hair messy from sleep. "Grandma, you okay?" I looked at him, my boy, grown into a man who still called me Grandma, even though Andrea called me Mama. "I think we just got the weapon we needed, honey." He nodded slow. "Whatever it is, we fight." The next court date was December 5th, pre-trial motions. Rachel's side pushed for accelerated reunification. Ours pushed back with new evidence. I didn't tell the kids everything yet, just that we had old messages that proved she'd never intended to come back for love, enough to keep hope alive. But as I drove to Callahan's office that morning, the phone heavy in my purse, I felt something shift. The truth wasn't buried anymore. It was loaded. And when we fired it in court, Rachel's perfect story was going to crumble. She'd planned for money. She hadn't planned for me finding her secrets, or for 3 kids who'd rather run than leave the only home they'd ever known. The battle wasn't over, but for the first time in months, I felt like we might actually win. My name is Eleanor Hayes, and by December 2025, the courtroom had become more familiar than my own kitchen. We were in and out of Franklin County Family Court twice a week. Motions, objections, sidebars that dragged on while the kids waited in the hallway with vending machine snacks and worried eyes. The air in there always smelled like old coffee and desperation. Judge Harlan presided like a man who'd seen every version of family tragedy and still believed in second chances, for biological parents anyway. My name is Eleanor Hayes, and by December 2025, the courtroom had become more familiar than my own kitchen. We were in and out of Franklin County Family Court twice a week. Motions, objections, sidebars that dragged on while the kids waited in the hallway with vending machine snacks and worried eyes. The air in there always smelled like old coffee and desperation. Judge Harlan presided like a man who'd seen every version of family tragedy and still believed in second chances, for biological parents anyway. Rachel's side pushed harder after the holidays. They filed an amended petition just before Christmas, full emergency custody, back child support from me for the years I'd raised them, and a request to freeze the trust fund payouts until stability was established. Stability, meaning her stability, meaning her hands on the money before Arthur turned 21 in April. Her lawyer, a slick guy named Victor Lang from a downtown firm, stood up at the December 12th hearing and laid it out smooth. "Your Honor, my client has demonstrated remarkable recovery. She has a stable marriage, a home in San Diego with room for 3 growing children, financial security through her husband's business. The trust fund, intended for the children's benefit, can best be managed by their mother during this transitional period. Mrs. Hayes-Voss is not seeking personal gain. She seeks to provide for her family." The judge nodded, sympathetic. "And the trust fund inquiries?" Rachel looked straight at him. "I only asked because I want to plan for their futures. College, therapy if they need it after all this upheaval. I'd never touch it for myself." Lies wrapped in pretty paper. I wanted to stand up and scream about the texts, the plan with Jay, the debts. But Callahan squeezed my hand. "Wait." Then came the bombshell Callahan had been holding. He stood. "Your Honor, we have evidence that contradicts Miss Hayes-Voss's narrative of financial stability and selfless intent. We've obtained records showing her husband, Daniel Voss, has significant outstanding debts, approximately $112,000 in unsecured loans and gambling-related obligations, as recently as 2024. Credit reports indicate multiple accounts in collection. Additionally, Mr. Voss's real estate license was revoked last year for mortgage fraud allegations." The courtroom went still. Rachel's face drained of color. Her lawyer objected. "Irrelevant. This is character assassination." But Judge Harlan allowed it. "Go on, Mr. Callahan." "We also have reason to believe the timing of this custody action correlates directly with the impending maturity of the trust fund. Arthur Hayes turns 21 in 4 months. The full disbursement begins then.
We submit this is not reunification. It is asset acquisition. Rachel's lawyer scrambled. Speculation. My client has no access to those funds personally. Callahan wasn't done. We're prepared to present further evidence at the final hearing, communications showing premeditated intent to abandon the children temporarily in order to claim the trust later. Rachel looked at me then, pure venom. For the first time, the mask slipped. Her lips pressed thin, eyes narrow. She knew I had something. The judge called a recess. In the hallway, the kids clustered around me. Arthur's fists were clenched. They're trying to take our money? That's what this is? I nodded. Looks like it, honey. Emily's voice shook. She asked me last visit if I knew how much was in Grandpa's account, said it could pay for art school. I thought she cared. Andrea whispered, I hate her. My heart broke all over again. After recess, the judge ruled. No freeze on the trust yet, but supervised visitation suspended pending the final hearing. The court needs to review this new information. We'll reconvene January 15th for the evidentiary hearing. Children's in-chambers interviews will occur next week. No contact outside court until then. Rachel stormed out without looking at us. Her lawyer followed, phone already to his ear. That night, we sat around the kitchen table. Spaghetti again, because it was easy and familiar. Arthur broke the silence. If she gets custody, she'll drain the account and leave again, won't she? Probably, I said quietly. But she won't get custody, not if we show the judge who she really is. Emily pushed her plate away. What if the judge still picks her, because she's the real mom? Andrea started crying. I don't want to live in California. I don't want a pool or a big house. I want here, with you. I pulled them close. Then that's what we fight for. Your voices matter. The judge has to listen. The next days blurred, preparing statements, practicing what the kids would say in chambers. Arthur wrote his out. I'm 20. I choose Grandma. She's my parent. Emily drew a timeline of our life. No Rachel after 2012. Andrea's poem was short. Mama Ellie's hands hold the world steady when the sky falls. Don't take her away. I cried reading it.
Meanwhile, Callahan's investigator kept digging. Found an old address for Jay, a guy named Jared Tate, Rachel's ex from before Daniel. He'd moved to Vegas, worked casinos. No recent contact, but the texts tied him to the original plan. We subpoenaed phone records, more messages from 2012 to 2016 confirming the scheme. The pressure built. Rachel's side filed a motion to suppress the phone evidence, chain of custody issues, old device, potential tampering. Callahan countered with photos of the attic box, timestamps on my screenshots, the charger receipt from the hardware store. We were ready. But ready doesn't mean safe. One night in early January, I woke to headlights sweeping across the bedroom wall. I got up, peeked through the blinds. A black SUV idled at the curb. Same one Rachel drove that first night. No one got out, just sat there 10 minutes, then pulled away slow. I didn't sleep after that. They were watching, waiting for us to crack. The final hearing loomed, January 15th, Evidence Day. The phone texts would play aloud, the debts would be laid bare, the kids' statements would hit the record. I sat on the porch the night before, wrapped in Tom's jacket, staring at the empty driveway. The cameras blinked red. No cars tonight. I thought about Rachel, how she'd looked at me in court, that flash of hate. She wasn't just after money anymore. She was after revenge on the woman who dared to raise her kids better than she ever could. But revenge cuts both ways. And the truth? It was about to cut deep. Because tomorrow, in that courtroom, her secrets were coming out, and nothing would ever be the same. My name is Eleanor Hayes, and January 15th, 2026 dawned cold and gray, the kind of Ohio winter morning where the sky looks like wet concrete, and your breath hangs in the air like regret. That was the day everything came to a head in Franklin County Family Court. Room 4B. Same scuffed wooden benches, same flickering fluorescent lights, same judge who'd been leaning toward Rachel since the start. I woke before dawn, made coffee I didn't drink, packed the kids' statements and the USB drive with the phone texts into my purse, like it was armor. Arthur drove us downtown, 20 now, old enough to vote, old enough to testify,
old enough to look at me in the rear view and say, "We got this, Grandma." Emily sat beside him, knuckles white around her sketchbook. Andrea curled against my side in the back, whispering, "I'm scared." I kissed her hair. "Me too, baby, but we're together." The courtroom was packed, more than usual. Reporters from the local paper had caught wind of the grandmother versus long-lost mom angle. A couple bloggers sat in the back with laptops. Rachel arrived last, flanked by her lawyer Victor Lang and Daniel Voss. Tall, tanned, expensive suit that didn't hide the hollow look in his eyes. She wore navy today, conservative, like she was auditioning for sainthood. No eye contact with me, none with the kids. Judge Harlan called order at 9 sharp. "This is the evidentiary hearing on the petition for custody modification. We'll hear from both sides, review submitted evidence, and take statements from the minor children in chambers afterward. Mr. Lang, you may proceed." Rachel's side went first. Victor Lang stood, smooth as ever. "Your Honor, my client has overcome extraordinary odds, addiction, mental health struggles, years of separation, to return for her children. She offers a stable, affluent home in California, access to top schools, therapy if needed. The trust fund will ensure their financial security under her guidance. We ask the court to grant temporary custody to facilitate reunification." He called Rachel to the stand. She walked up slow, head high, sat, swore in. Tears started almost immediately. Practiced, maybe, but convincing. "I left because I was dying inside," she said, voice breaking perfectly. "I couldn't be the mother they needed. I got help. I got clean. I built a life so I could come back worthy of them. I regret every lost day, but I'm here now. I love them. I want them home." Lang handed her tissues. She dabbed, looked at the kids. "Arthur, Emily, Andrea, I'm so sorry. Please give me a chance." The judge nodded. "Any questions, Mr. Callahan?" Callahan stood. "Miss Hayes-Voss, you claim you attempted contact after 2012. Can you provide records, phone logs, emails, anything?" Rachel hesitated. I called a few times early on. My mom never answered. Later, I was too ashamed." "No proof?" "I deleted old numbers when I got a new phone, but I swear—" Callahan cut in gently. "And the trust fund? You inquired about it in early 2025, before any custody filing. Why?" "To plan for their future. College, a home." "Did you discuss using those funds to pay off your husband's gambling debts?" Her face flushed. That's not true." Callahan turned to the judge. "Your Honor, we submit Exhibit 12, text messages from Miss Hayes-Voss's 2012 phone, recovered by my client. They demonstrate premeditated abandonment with intent to reclaim the children and the trust for financial gain." The bailiff passed copies to the bench, to Rachel's table. Callahan connected his laptop to the courtroom projector. The texts appeared on the big screen, blown up large. "March 2012, Rachel to Jay. Drop them with Mom. Wait till they're 21. Money's ours then." "April 2012, I'm doing it tomorrow." 2016, over 70K now. Arthur turns 21 in 2025. 2024, attorney says we can push. Money matures soon. We're almost there. The courtroom went dead silent. You could hear breathing. Rachel stared at the screen like it was a ghost. Her hands gripped the rails so tight her knuckles blanched. Lang jumped up. "Objection! Chain of custody! This phone is ancient. Authenticity unproven." Callahan was ready. "We have photos of the attic storage, timestamps on recovery, forensic report from a certified digital examiner confirming no tampering. The device is available for inspection." Judge Harlan studied the texts. Overruled. Evidence admitted. Rachel's voice cracked when she spoke again. Those were private, out of context. I was desperate." Callahan pressed. "Desperate enough to plan abandonment as a long-term strategy?" She didn't answer, just looked down. Then the judge asked the kids to come to chambers, one by one. Arthur went first, came back stone-faced. I told him straight, "I'm staying. She's not my mom." Emily next, returned with red eyes but chin up. I showed him the drawing, the timeline. Know her after 2012. Andrea last. She was shaking when she came out. I held her tight. She whispered. I read the poem, told him I'd run away if they made me go. The judge called a short recess. Rachel stood, approached our table. First time she'd come close since that night on the porch. Her voice low, venomous. "You ungrateful." She caught herself, looked at the kids. After everything she stopped, realized the slip. Everyone heard it. Ungrateful. Not love, not regret. Resentment. The bailiff stepped closer. She backed off. Back in session, Judge Harlan cleared his throat. I've heard enough for today. The evidence raises serious questions about motive and credibility. I'm pausing proceedings to review the full record. Children remain with Mrs. Hayes pending final ruling. No contact from petitioner until further notice. We reconvene in 2 weeks for closing arguments and my decision. He banged the gavel.
Rachel shot up, face twisted. Lang grabbed her arm, pulled her toward the door. Daniel followed, looking like he wanted to disappear. Outside in the hallway, the kids collapsed against me. Arthur hugged us all. Emily sobbed quietly. Andrea clung like she'd never let go. "We did it," Arthur said. "We showed them." "Not yet," I whispered, "but close." That night we went home. No celebration, just quiet relief. I made hot chocolate, extra marshmallows. We sat on the couch under blankets, watching old movies until they fell asleep against me. I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling. The texts were out. The debts were public. Her mask had cracked wide open. But I knew her, knew the look in her eyes when she almost said ungrateful. She wasn't done fighting. She'd come for the money. Now she'd come for spite. The final ruling was 2 weeks away. And in those 2 weeks, I kept the doors locked, the cameras on, and my phone charged. Because the breaking point wasn't over. It was just beginning. Rachel shot up, face twisted. Lang grabbed her arm, pulled her toward the door. Daniel followed, looking like he wanted to disappear. Outside in the hallway, the kids collapsed against me. Arthur hugged us all. Emily sobbed quietly. Andrea clung like she'd never let go. "We did it," Arthur said. "We showed them." "Not yet," I whispered, "but close." That night we went home. No celebration, just quiet relief. I made hot chocolate, extra marshmallows. We sat on the couch under blankets, watching old movies until they fell asleep against me. I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling. The texts were out. The debts were public. Her mask had cracked wide open. But I knew her, knew the look in her eyes when she almost said ungrateful. She wasn't done fighting. She'd come for the money. Now she'd come for spite. The final ruling was 2 weeks away. And in those 2 weeks, I kept the doors locked, the cameras on, and my phone charged. Because the breaking point wasn't over. It was just beginning.
My name is Eleanor Hayes, and on February 2nd, 2026, Franklin County Family Court felt smaller than ever. The same creaky benches, the same judge's gavel that had banged like a heartbeat through every hearing. But this time, the air was different, thicker, heavier, like the room itself knew the end was coming. No reporters today. The story had gone quiet after the texts leaked to the local news. Just us, Rachel's side, the lawyers, and Judge Harlan looking tired but resolute. I sat between the kids, Arthur on my right, 20 now, hand resting on the bench like he was ready to stand up and fight if needed. Emily on my left, sketchbook closed for once, fingers laced tight in her lap. Andrea pressed against my side, 15 and still small enough to tuck under my arm. We hadn't slept much the night before. Hot chocolate turned cold on the counter, old movies playing to no one. We just held each other until the sky lightened. Rachel entered last. No Daniel this time. He'd stayed in California, probably lawyering up for his own mess. She wore black, simple, hair pulled back severe. No tears today, no soft sweater, just a straight spine and eyes that avoided everyone. Judge Harlan didn't waste time. I've reviewed the full record. Guardianship documents, financial disclosures, character affidavits, the children's in-chamber statements, and most significantly, the text messages from 2012 onward. The evidence clearly shows Ms. Hayes-Voss planned her departure in 2012 with the express intent of allowing the trust fund to mature before reclaiming custody and control of the assets. This was not abandonment due to temporary incapacity. It was calculated estrangement for financial gain. He paused, looked at Rachel. Your testimony regarding remorse and rehabilitation is noted, but it is undermined by the premeditation evident in your communications. The court finds your recent actions motivated primarily by impending disbursement of the Thomas J. Hayes Family Trust, not by genuine parental interest.
Rachel's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, we request—" "Overruled," Harlan said flatly. "The petition for custody modification is denied. Temporary and permanent guardianship remains with Eleanor Hayes. The children's preferences, their long-term bonding, and the evidence of abandonment outweigh any presumption in favor of the biological parent in this instance." He turned to us. "Mrs. Hayes, the court commends you for the extraordinary care you've provided. These young people are fortunate." Arthur exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for years. Emily's shoulders dropped. Andrea buried her face in my neck, whispering, "It's over." But it wasn't quite. Harlan continued. "Additionally, the court refers this matter to the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office for review of potential fraud and perjury in the filing of this custody action. False accusations of kidnapping, misrepresentation of intent, these are serious. Ms. Hayes-Voss, you are ordered not to contact the children or Mrs. Hayes without express court permission. Violation will result in contempt charges."
Rachel sat frozen. No outburst, no tears, just pale skin and a slow blink, like the reality had finally hit. Her lawyer whispered furiously in her ear. She nodded once, stood, and walked out without a word. The door closed behind her with a soft click that echoed louder than any slam. We didn't celebrate in the hallway. We just hugged. Long, tight, the kind that says everything words can't. Then we went home. The next days blurred into something almost normal. No more court dates looming, no more supervised visits, no more strange cars idling at the curb. The prosecutor's office called a week later. Rachel had left Ohio the day after the ruling, flew back to California. Daniel's gambling debts were being investigated separately. Turns out he'd been using her name on some accounts. She wasn't charged with kidnapping. My guardianship had been too solid for that. But the FRAD referral stuck. Last I heard through Callahan, she was negotiating a plea for restitution and probation. Quiet. Out of our lives. The trust fund matured as planned. Arthur got his share first, enough for community college paid off and a down payment on a small fixer-upper he wanted to renovate himself. Emily used hers for art school tuition and supplies that didn't come from thrift stores. Andrea's was locked until she turned 21, but we set up a college fund with the interest. I never touched a dime for myself. It was theirs. Tom's gift. Finally safe. One evening in March, we sat on the porch, new swing Arthur had built, creak-free now. The air smelled like spring coming early. Andrea read aloud from her notebook. "Some mothers leave footprints that fade in the rain. Others stay, plant roots in the mud, grow trees that shade you when the storm won't stop." Emily leaned her head on my shoulder. Arthur squeezed my hand. "You're the tree, Grandma." I laughed through tears, and you're the shade I needed. We didn't talk about Rachel much after that. When the kids asked questions, I answered honestly. She made choices. We made ours, and ours kept us together. Sometimes I still check the driveway at night. Habit, maybe, or hope that one day she'll show up different. Sorry, changed, without a lawyer or a plan. But mostly, I don't wait anymore. Because family isn't the person who gives birth to you. It's the one who stays up when you're sick, who drives you to practices in the rain, who fights courts and lies and years of silence so you can grow up safe. It's the one who shows up, day after day, even when it's hard. I sit on that porch some evenings, watching the street lights flicker on. The kids are inside, Arthur fixing something, Emily painting, Andrea writing. Laughter drifts through the screen door. I don't look for taillights disappearing anymore. I look at the house behind me, at the life we built, at the love that won, and I know, deep in the places that used to ache, that the truth always finds its way out. Sometimes it takes 13 years, a courtroom, and a box of old texts, but it comes. If you're reading this, maybe you're a grandmother raising grandkids, or a mom who's been left holding the pieces, or just someone wondering if sacrifice matters. Hear me. Your heart isn't wrong. The nights you cried alone, The dollars you stretched, the hugs you gave when no one else would, they mattered. They built something unbreakable, and no one, no court, no lie, no long-lost daughter, can take that away. Thank you for listening to my story. It's not just mine anymore. It's ours.